I did not want to get into politics on this platform, but I have to comment on the new dietary guidelines as a dietitian because I have some thoughts. So they just dropped, and some of it's good and some of it's bad. These guidelines have always had some amount of lobbying involved in them and commercial interests. I am on board with the emphasis on whole foods and fiber and reducing ultra-processed foods to an extent. A lot of neurodivergent people need ultra-processed foods. It is incredibly difficult to manage the executive functioning pieces that come together when you need to prepare and plan meals and get that food into your body, especially if you're low spoons. And so I want to emphasize that these guidelines do not change that recommendation. Dietitians still have to work within the evidence that is present for your condition. These guidelines are made for the general public. Complex chronic illness and neurodivergent folks is not general public stuff. So that being said, we can all agree that for the general public, though, the science does say limiting ultra-processed foods and increasing our whole grains and produce is, of course, important. Those guidelines have never changed, though. Nothing about this is new. What is new and concerning is the emphasis on saturated fat. 1 in 3 people in the US will die from cardiovascular related diseases. That's 1 American every 34 seconds, and that is on the CDC website. The guideline does still retain that most Americans should be keeping their saturated fat under 10%. I say most because if you're on a keto diet for seizure disorder, you're going to go over that. So as a complex chronic illness dietitian, I'm here to just fill in the gap there. You can't really promote foods high in saturated fat like this pyramid does without creating confusion, because this contradicts the 10% limit. And then there's this whole idea of fixing the food pyramid. Here's the thing. The food pyramid hasn't been around for over a decade. The pyramid went out of style when I became a dietitian. During my internship, we switched from the pyramid to the plate. And the plate was a lot easier to teach, for sure. So now we have this pyramid that's incredibly difficult to teach again. That makes no sense to anybody and is very confusing and contradicting. As a dietitian who works with chronic illness, neurodivergent clients, and people who don't fit into boxes neatly already, clarity really matters. I am glad about whole foods and food quality being central, but I am very cautious about oversimplifying saturated fat and red meat. And I don't think going backwards to an old framework that people didn't understand already, the pyramid, upside down or upright, is still not easy to understand. And my job, and most dietitians' jobs, is to help people make sense of mixed messaging with nuance and not fear. And our jobs just got a lot harder again. For more neurodivergent and chronic illness nutrition content, like and follow for more.